Guys, DOGE has gotten off to a great start by drastically cutting USAID payments and staff to almost zero. But are these cuts big enough to put a dent in our overspending and huge US debt? I'm going to look at what they cut so far and what targets are next and how big the savings could be compared to what we spend. And to put it in simple terms that people can understand, I will show what the US finances look like if the US was an actual person with income, spending, debt, and interest payments. Lastly, I will talk about who is to blame and why both the majority of Democrats and Republicans in Congress have been quiet all this time and act like this massive government waste and fraud is a complete shock to them. So let's get started. So to start with, Zero Hedge shows that USAID-funded massive news platform extending censorship industrial complex to billions worldwide. And even Elon Musk said USAID pressured advertisers to boycott any media that was not left-wing. So WikiLeaks published this report that USAID pushed nearly $500 million through a secretive US government-financed NGO called Internews Network, which worked with 4291 media outlets producing in 1 year almost 4,800 hours of broadcasts, reaching up to 778 million people and training over 9,000 journalists. And they also supported social media censorship initiatives, of course. So basically, the US government using our own taxpayer dollars to fight against anybody who has a different opinion than what they like. And here's a new one. The examples of waste and abuse are actually on the White House website. All right, $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. $6 million for tourism in Egypt. Millions to Eco Health Alliance, which is now no longer a conspiracy, but is now fact that they funded the research in Wuhan that gave us the coronavirus. And if you want to see what somebody's actual goal is, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. So here, hundreds of millions of dollars to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan, benefiting the Taliban. And here's a picture of US Army in a poppy field in Afghanistan saying it's an eradication force in 2006. Let's see how that eradication went. So if you don't know, before 9/11, the Taliban took control of Afghanistan and basically told all the farmers if they make any poppy, they will end them. And this is the poppy production in 2001 before the US went to Afghanistan. And here is the production after we went to Afghanistan. So much for that eradication. It looks like it was more like a cultivation process. And so in just a few days, the Treasury is agreeing to a new anti-fraud measure to claw back $50 billion in payment fraud. Now, here's the question. They knew about this fraud all along, but had no problem with it until now DOGE shows up. So Trump revealed in the Post that Treasury officials estimated that $100 billion in annual entitled payments may be going to individuals without verifiable identification. And so in discussing with Treasury personnel, Musk asked how much of that is obvious and unequivocal fraud. And the consensus was that at least half, or $50 billion a year, or $1 billion per week, is fraudulent. It's funny how they have no problem with it because it's not their money, it's your money, and that's what they think of your tax dollars. And so hopefully the next target of DOGE is the Pentagon after the Defense Department failed its 7th audit in a row. How many audits in a row do you have to fail before somebody actually comes in there and starts looking at where the fraud and theft is? So Trump says we're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse. So Trump says he's going to direct DOGE to investigate the Department of Education and the Pentagon for fraud and abuse. They are going to have their hands full over there. Now, is the cutting out waste going to make a difference of where we are going with our deficit and national debt. Now, Musk is saying that they're targeting $2 trillion in wasteful spending. Can they cut out 2 trillion? I don't know. Maybe. Will it make a difference? 2 trillion is a lot, as we'll see here. It could make a difference. I don't think it's going to be 2 trillion, but it is a very good start. But let's see what these numbers actually look like. So the US takes in about $5 trillion and spends about $7 trillion in 2024. Now, some of this spending they can't touch, like Social Security, Medicare maybe, national defense, but there is a lot of waste in Medicare and national defense. Net interest, you can't touch that. I mean, that's what they have to pay on the interest. But health, what is this? Is this Medicaid? Is this welfare? Other income security, that sounds like also kind of welfare programs. Other 311 billion. Let's cut that off right immediately. Take this out. Take education out, 305 billion, or cut it down severely, and that's already close to 600 billion. Take another 200 out of national defense. Close down half of our 800 bases worldwide, or something like that. Look at the fraud in Medicare. There's probably another 200 billion there. Probably another $100 billion here someplace. So all in all, maybe there might be $1 trillion that they can cut, but there is going to be a lot of people pushing back because that $1 trillion is going into the fraudsters' pockets, and they're not going to go away quietly. They're going to go kicking and screaming. Now, to understand in simple terms what position we are in the US government, let's look at this. So the US takes in $5 trillion, it spends $7 trillion, meaning it spends $2 trillion more than it makes per year in 2024. Total debt, $35 trillion. It's a little more than that now. Yearly interest is about $1 trillion. Okay. If the US government was an actual person, it would look like this. The person makes $50,000 after tax. Their yearly spending is $70,000. So they spend $20,000 more per year than they make, and they have $350,000 in credit card debt that they pay about 3% interest on. So that interest is $10,000 a year, right? The government pays 3% on their 35 trillion, which is about $1 trillion a year. So every percentage point that interest rates go up on their debt is another 350 billion we have to pay in interest. That's why the Fed wants to lower rates. But anyway, back to this. If you were this person and you were making 50, you're spending 70, you got 350,000 in debt, and $10,000 of your take-home pay is interest. The only thing you can do is, number one, stop this overspending per year. So you have to cut out this 20,000, and then to even make a dent in the principal of this 350,000, you have to spend less than 40,000 a year, because 10,000 comes right off the top to the interest. So if the other 40,000 that you have left, if you can cut out some of that spending, you could put it towards paying off this debt. In reality, the government, I doubt, will even get to the point of cutting out this 2 trillion in overspending per year, let alone making a dent in this debt. So DOGE is off to a really good start, and if they keep up this energy, who knows, they may cut out $1 trillion or so. Are we going to stop overspending what we make every year? That's probably unlikely to happen. Why? Well, where do you think that waste is really going? Is everyone in the government just stupid and they're throwing that money out of the window while they sit back and get their $100,000 a year government salaries? No, of course not. That money is being stolen and split between the people stealing it and the people approving the theft for their own kickbacks or to further their political agenda, or both. But when they are confronted with this fraud, they will all play stupid and blame someone either above them or someone that came before them. There's a lot of money at stake and a lot of powerful people and businesses at the receiving end of this theft. So they will not just accept losing all this free money without a big fight. So expect to see all kinds of smears against anything DOGE does. But at the end of the day, ask yourself, who would be against cutting out taxpayer theft? Well, Only the people receiving this stolen money, or the people who don't pay taxes, or both. There's a saying, ignorance swims in the river of malice. So when they get caught for doing evil, they pretend that they are just stupid instead of being evil. A perfect example of this is the former head of the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, who pretended to guard the border by using our tax dollars to fund NGOs to encourage and help millions come through the US, while we offered them the incentives like free housing, healthcare, and monthly cash. All the while, he claimed that the border was under control and there was nothing to see at the border. This is malice claiming ignorance when they are exposed. So, will anyone go to jail for this? How blatant does the fraud need to be before someone gets charged with theft or, more fitting, RICO charges? Don't hold your breath. Congress is not stupid. All of this waste and fraud is because of favors and kickbacks that benefit them, with no regard to how much it is stealing taxpayers' money, because they will leave office rich and no one will notice, as the theft is just added to the debt that gets kicked down the road. There's a Greek saying about government fraud. You can't handle honey without getting some on your fingers. So the bigger of pot the honey, the more you end up getting on you. So the way our country is run, this is how our politicians look. This is why the founders of this country wanted a small government, because the less amount of money in the tax pot there is, the less they can steal from it. When you have a small church of 100 people, it's very hard to hide stealing the church donations. But when you have a mega church with thousands of members, all of a sudden the leaders are living in mansions and flying in a private jet and Rolls Royces. Funny how that works, right? So hopefully DOGE keeps going and adds criminal charges to this theft. What you will notice as more of this fraud gets uncovered, you will see all of Congress clutching their pearls, completely shocked that this is going on. It will look something like this. So guys, while I love what DOGE is doing, it may be too little, too late. Either way, no one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself by getting out of your own personal debt, and don't waste money that you control. Maybe everybody should get their own personal DOGE mission to wipe out wasteful and unnecessary spending in their own lives and save and invest instead of racking up credit card debt for things that lose value instead of gain value. Thanks for watching.